Good evening, everyone. In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Law of New Jersey, notice of this April 13th, 2021 meeting of the Bridgewater-Raritan Regional Board of Education was posted electronically on the district website and provided on January 5th, 2021, and this date looks wrong, by sending a 48-hour written notice to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Bridgewater Township Clerk, Raritan Borough Clerk, and by posting on the bulletin board in the Harmon V. Wade Administration Building. As this is a virtual meeting, those unable to access the meeting via the internet are able to listen in by dialing into the conference line 415-655-0001, access code 182-630-7079. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Here.
Mrs. Hurley,
Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Here, sorry.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Here.
Miss Lee? Not yet. Miss Levitt,
Here.
Mr. Joshi,
Present.
Mr. Singer,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mrs. Barlow.
Here. Next, we are up to the student representatives report. Marmai and Paulina.
Yeah, so for academics, each year the Department of School Counseling coordinates the Senior Local Scholarship and Awards program at the high school, and a Google form had to be completed in order to be considered for scholarships, with the exception of a few departmental awards, and the deadline for this application was Friday, April 9th. The 2021 BRHS commencement ceremonies will be held at Patriot Stadium on June 23rd with a rain date of the 24th if needed. There will be 3 ceremonies in accordance with state guidelines issued on March 10th, 2021, where each graduate will be able to invite 3 guests who will sit in the stands. The event itself will be live streamed on YouTube, and these plans are subject to change depending on state and local guidelines. There will be an ACT test administration on April 17th, and all COVID guidelines will be enacted, along with a COVID screening questionnaire before entering the school. For the arts, the theater department held auditions for their spring production over the weekend of March 27th and 28th virtually. For athletics, this week's athletes of the week are Casey Choi and Ella Handley for girls swimming, Bianca Burke and Luana Kopp for girls winter track, Vishnu Channapragada and Marco Langan for boys winter track, Grace Kagnowski for girls wrestling, and Trace Bina for boys wrestling. The athletes of the week from last week were Patrick Cullen and Brady Cordilla for boys basketball, Ava Palfreyman and Grace Zhao for girls swimming, Brianna Corbett and Carly Klein for girls winter track, Matt Frank and Sammy Fromberg for boys winter track, Rachel Bender for gymnastics, Zach Davis and Nick Sacco for wrestling. And congratulations to BR wrestler Nick Sacco, who earned his 100th career win the week of March 19th.
Since the inception of girls wrestling in New Jersey, we've had several girls compete on the high school wrestling team. However, this past weekend, one of our wrestlers put their stamp on the program. Grace Kaznowski, a junior Bridgewater Raritan High School, has become the first in school history to place in the NJSIAA Girls State Wrestling Tournament. She placed 5th this past Saturday, hosted by Phillipsburg, going 2-2 with 2 pins. She becomes the first girl from Bridgewater Raritan to place in state since the inception of girls wrestling just a few years ago. Grace finishes out the season with a 6-2 record as well as a Middlesex County title. She's an incredible student athlete who has paved the way for girls wrestling for Bridgewater Raritan. So as for student life, we have Anish Nagalkar has been selected from a very talented pool of applicants to participate in this summer's Governor's School of Engineering and Technology hosted by the Rutgers University School of Engineering. He will be spending 4 weeks free of charge engaged in engineering and technology with others who share his interests. Scholars will be taking 4 academic online classes, completing a virtual research and design project in a group of 4 to 5 students, and meeting equally talented peers and professionals from across the state. During the week of March 22nd to the 26th, Student Council held their first ever virtual Spirit Week. Freshmen earned 37 points for Spirit Week participation, sophomores earned 37 points, juniors earned 12 points, and seniors earned 27 points for the Spirit Week participation. The winner of the trivia contest was juniors, who will earn 30 points toward their class total. The Student Council raised $431.13 from the Chipotle fundraiser, and a check for that amount will be donated to the Food Bank Network of Somerset County on behalf of the junior class. The Mental Health Awareness Club, run by Sanya Shah, is running a fundraiser selling apparel with the original design BR Strong until April 20th. All proceeds will be going to the Somerset Regional Animal Shelter. Sophia Consalvo and Grace Zhao, sophomores and filming and video editing students, submitted films to the 2021 Count Basie Senior Teen and College Film Fest held on Wednesday, April 14th. Both of their films are official selections and are up for an audience award. All voting for the audience award is done online and by April 13th. The FHLA and HOSA Club is collecting donations for Be the Match, a nonprofit organization that allows patients to receive life-saving blood stem cell transplants. It is also sponsoring a gearwear fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you.
Jackie,
I'm really
Jackie.
glad to, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, real quick. I just have a question for Polina. She mentioned the BR Strong merchandise. Is there a link that you know of, or is that something that can be sent out?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can get that sent out. I'll look into it right now.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Jackie, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. And Pauline, I think you also mentioned something about an audience being able to vote on the student films. Is there a link for us to get that too?
I can also find that, sure.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And again, as I say each time, it's really great to hear the wide variety of activities taking place and the amazing things that our high school students are doing. I'm really happy to hear about the graduation being at Somerset Patriots Stadium. And I know we're going to have multiple ceremonies, but it's great that we'll be able to do that safely and with people, being able to have that big milestone recognized in person. The other thing, I thought it was also great to hear about doing a virtual Spirit Week. So it's good that we're looking at ways to engage people in spite of the the situation with the pandemic that we're in. So thank you very much. And as you guys know, if you have work, feel free to drop whenever you need to. And obviously, we'd love to have you here if you're able to stay. So. Next, we are up to the superintendent's report with Dr. Ficara.
So essentially what I want to do is give an overview tonight of the CDC guidelines, how they changed and how that affects our district and what that means for the future. So for the elementary schools, when the CDC guidelines changed, it brought us to 3 feet apart. At the middle and the high school, it would allow us to go 3 feet apart if we were in areas of low, moderate, or substantial community transmission, and 6 feet apart if we were in high transmission. Next slide, please. So that was the first announcement that came out just from the CDC. We started preparing classrooms, cleaning previously stored furniture, and preparing new tapings of our classrooms. Shortly thereafter, the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines came out. They reflect and rely on the CDC, but they have their own New Jersey translation to it. It's the New Jersey Department of Health. They called for 3-foot social distancing for K through 6 with face masks, but 6-foot social distancing for 7 through 12 in high-risk categories, and they made no mention of cohorts. So if you were in a high risk category, it was 6 feet social distancing, according to the New Jersey Department of Health. Sean, next slide. What that translated to for our district was that we were able to bring our K-6 students back 5 days a week with a continued shortened schedule. Grades 7 through 12, we were just able to maintain the same cohort groups because we had additional students, and those cohort groups were being overcrowded when we tried to combine cohort A with cohort B. We were able to do it in the K-6 because of the 3 feet. 7 through 12, we were not. A couple of people asked more specifics in that. So when we ran the numbers, we took the Power School numbers, the size of each classroom, ran the schedules, and of course we gave that information to the principals and their administrative staff for a close-up view. And they reported back to us that in the middle school, for example, there were 238 sections, those are different periods throughout the day and different sections in the periods, that if you combine the A and B cohorts and kept the 6-foot distancing, that they would be over capacity. And this essentially affected about 689 students if you took the total number of students over capacity each period. For grades 9 through 12, something similar, 226 sections were over capacity. That means 226 classrooms at different times during the day had more students than their capacity could hold if we adhered to the 6-foot social distancing guidelines. And that was for approximately 539 students. Next slide, please. There was some questions about whether or not New Jersey was truly in a high category. So this is the New Jersey Cali report from the New Jersey Department of Health. It's a weekly graph. This is our latest. And as you can see, not only is our region in high, but the entire state of New Jersey is high. And in fact, we have heard, anyone who's listened to the news, that New Jersey, I think, and Michigan are the two hot spots in the country at the moment. So we are clearly in the high category, which means we have to stay for 7 through 12 with 6-foot social distancing and masks. Next slide, please. So I have a number of questions about planning for September. And of course, as we discussed at, I imagine, every meeting we've had, we follow the department, the guidelines from the New Jersey Department of Education, the New Jersey Department of Health, and the CDC guidelines, as well as having a personal contact with our Bridgewater Township local health official, who actually we've been in contact with every day in the last week and week before. So currently, when the 6-foot social distancing in 7 through 12 is because of the high risk levels, and the 3-foot social distancing in K-6 is with masks. So I want to make sure that we understand the distinction that the 6-foot social distancing for K-6 is required if students are going to be eating, right? We have brought this directly to our health official for any kind of clarification, and we've had numerous contacts and conversations, and his recommendation is that 6-foot social distancing because we were in a high risk level for high school, and 3-foot for the elementary school, but students could not eat within 3 feet of each other at the elementary school. So again, we rely on the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the CDC, and we stay in close contact with our Bridgewater health official, Kevin Sumner, who we discuss this issue, as I said, weekly. Kevin has been our health official in the township, in the school district since the pandemic began. And he was recently reappointed for the last 2 years. So clearly it's not only the administration that has confidence in Kevin Sumner and his recommendations, because he's just received a wonderful vote of confidence by being reappointed on March 23rd for a 2-year term. So I think it's the responsible thing for us to do during a pandemic to follow the recommendation of the health official who agrees with the Department of Health in the New Jersey Department of Health and the CDC. And in fact, that's the recommendation from our county superintendent in the Department of Education, that when there's any lack of clarity, we check with our local health officer. So the question that keeps coming up, and I'll try to be as clear as possible, is if things don't change. I've got quite a few questions like this today. If things don't change, would we be opening 5 days a week, full day in September? Well, if I could do that now, I would, or we would, right? If the guidance change allowed it to happen, we would certainly follow suit. Just as when the guidance said 3-foot social distancing in the elementary schools, we followed suit. So in terms of planning for September, we think reasonable people can plan, which we are, for full day, 5 days a week instruction, considering the rate at which the vaccine is being distributed, and we are planning for a 5 day a week, full day program. However, if something improbable but not impossible happens, and we end up being handed or given new guidelines, or guidelines that are very much like they are today, 6-foot social distancing at the high school, 7 through 12, we would follow those guidelines the way we are now. The only way we could manage 6-foot social distancing at the high school and the middle school or the elementary school, if that's the recommendation of our Bridgewater Township health officer and the New Jersey Department of Health and the CDC, and I would see no reason why we would break rank with them. But if that were the recommendation through some unforeseen circumstance or unexpected, we would have to double the space in the schools. Schools were not built for children to be 6 feet apart and hold the number of children that we have in our classes. So we currently have approximately students in the low 20s in our classrooms, but we can only fit 11 at 6 feet distance apart. When we go to 3 foot apart, we can fit the 22 students in, and we do. But as far as planning for September, I don't think it would be rational to plan to double the size of our classrooms capacity between now and September. And I also don't think it would be prudent for us to break from the guidance that's provided to us by the health officials, both from the federal, state, and local level, all in agreement. So that is so. Once again, we are planning, and I think a reasonable person could make the assumption that at the level of distribution of the vaccine and the willingness that it seems that the flexibility that seems to be coming with that from both the CDC and the Department of Health, as evidenced by the K to 6 3-foot social distancing, that I think as it's prudent to plan for a full day, 5 days a week session for September. In part of doing that planning, part of the process has to do with the high school. We have to plan for a high school program that can pivot just in case the improbable but not the impossible happens. And I know at this time, 2 months ago, I never thought that we would have popped back up into high and would be the hot spot in the state of New Jersey. I mean, in the country with another state. So I don't think it would be prudent for us to plan a schedule that did not have the capacity to go back into a hybrid if necessary. So we would be planning for a single lunch program for the high school for next year, which would give the capacity both for full day instruction, and if we had to go into a hybrid, we would be able to go into a hybrid as well. The only other, another question that came up late in the day had to do with the computer distribution at the elementary school, and I'm going to ask Karen Jones to just step in on that.
Sure. So we had some questions just because parents were asked to return computers in the elementary schools, and that's because we're not really one-to-one yet. So we ordered Chromebook cases. Once we have the cases in, that will come at the end of May, we would be able to have children transport them back and forth between home. But right now, with the combined cohorts and kids coming in 5 days, we need them back in school. The Chromebooks that we ordered back in August are just supposed to come in this week, actually. So at some point we'll be caught up and we will be able to be one-to-one, and we'll have the carrying cases. Kids will be able to bring the Chromebooks back and forth, but that's not where we currently are. So it's more important that they're in school than they're at home for potentially homework. If it's a problem, parents should reach out to the school directly, and then we would work with families to provide computers as we did last year.
I have a question
Thank you,
on
Karen.
Sure.
that. In order to facilitate getting one-to-one faster, would it be worthwhile to survey the 5 to 8 grade parent students to see if they have a device that they can use as BYOD and then return those devices for the meantime?
So let me think about that.
Okay.
Because
I understand that. I understand you still want the STAR program to have those devices. I just figured.
Right. I know it's an interesting idea, and I can follow up with Jamie Kochis. The thing is, we are kind of at one-to-one right now in the elementary school, but we're not at like 2-to-1. So we do not have enough Chromebooks for kids to have them in school and also have them home. The
Right.
problem really
Okay.
is in transporting them back and forth, and that's because we need the cases. And according to the email today, that'll be at the end of May that we have them. So the only time this would become a problem would be, potentially if a student had to submit homework through, a computer, which isn't necessary because you can do homework, the old-fashioned way and do it on paper. But the other thing is, if there's a family device, it's more reasonable to think that a student might be able to use a family device for, 15 minutes of homework a night and share than it is to do it, for a 4-hour day when you have multiple kids on the same device. This is a problem in kindergarten. We did identify that because students have that extra 15 minutes of work that they do every day. So we are going to actually have the kindergarten students keep the Chromebook home. So if they've already been returned at this point, we will be giving those back. And so kindergarten students will have a Chromebook at home. They'll also have one that they can utilize in school. If there are any other problems in the meantime while we're waiting for the additional Chromebooks or the Chromebook carrying cases to come back, All parents have to do is reach out to the building, and we've already communicated with the principals, so we know how many extra that we have, and we would redistribute them. If there were a situation where suddenly at the end of the year, we had a primary school that went out for 2 weeks because of, positive cases in the school, which hasn't happened, right? It happened at the high school multiple times, not at a primary school. If it is, then we would either send the devices home with students, or we would have to set up something as we did last year where we had, an opportunity for parents who still needed a device to come and pick one up. And so that's where we are currently with the situation.
Thank you, Karen.
I have a quick question. Looking ahead to the summer, can we assume that we will be allowing students that have a need for a device to keep them over the summer, particularly because you're developing lots of learning acceleration programs over the summer? Just want to make sure they have access.
Yes, so there's an excellent chance that we have to collect things and redistribute and make sure that, because we did a lot of shifting of our materials in the beginning of the year with the bring your own devices at the high school, with the one-to-one initiative, the STAR initiative in 5-8. So we might have to kind of collect things again and make sure that we know what we have and then redistribute. But yes, students who need access to computers over the summer to do enrichment or to do our summer learning programs will absolutely have access to them. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a quick question on that too. So we upgraded some software to do bring your own device. Is that upgrade, what needs to be done to bring that upgrade across the district?
Say that one more time, Barry, please.
So we upgraded some software in order to bring your own device, I think at the high school. Is that software and network capability what we purchased and added on? Is that flexible throughout the district, or is that an additional add-on to do bring your own device in other buildings?
I actually don't know the answer to that one. So that one I will take note of and I'll check it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I think we have some preloaded software and programs on our devices that we hand out. So that may be a problem as well.
Though I am receiving communications right now that the BYOD network is set up at the high school. So I'll
Right,
check
at the
into
high
that
school.
tomorrow.
Yep.
That's correct. So I think we would have to make some adjustments to bring it to other schools.
So in making those adjustments, we could go one-to-one sooner, maybe alleviate some of these issues. And along the same lines, we haven't had our technology briefing in a while. So this is the first I heard about devices going in and out. So it might be interesting to maybe at the next, I think it goes through FFT, our technology update for what we're doing, what we've done this year, what we're doing next year, to bring us up to date on where we sit. I mean, it's been great. You guys have been flexible, moving devices around, getting everybody satisfied, getting them fixed. That's fantastic. Just kind of, it'd be interesting to see where we sit and what the plan is moving forward too, how to do it.
Jackie, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Well, not about the devices anymore, but back to the regular update. Is there, I'm understanding all of the guidelines in 3 foot, 6 foot in the K to 6 area. And I'm sure the principals have been asked to do this. So, but I just want to ask anyway again about looking at space like the former technology room or the library or the music room, other specials, rooms that were used for specials or cycles, an art room if no class is taking art, to spread kids out at lunchtime so they could eat in school and maybe have a full day for at least some of the rest of the fourth marking period. Or tents, it's going to be warmer. Yes, there might be some rain, but I wanted to just bring this up to make sure like every stone was turned, for whatever this expression is. Don't quote me on that, but just to make sure, if a teacher has a I know that they have to keep cohorts together, but I would love to see, to just make sure and ask the question that every bit of space at the K to 6 was examined for lunch. And even bringing it outside with the tent type situation so they could grab and go, grab a sandwich, grab a brown bag and sit outside for 20 minutes or so at 6 feet apart to have their mask off and eat and drink and get back to the classroom. So Dr. Ficarra, I'm sure, I'm sure it's a rhetorical question. I'm sure it's been asked, but I just want to express.
Yeah, so I just want to reassure everyone that, our principals and the pandemic teams have really tried, and they do examine every aspect and every inch of space. One of the things that happens along with the space is when you take children out 6 feet apart from each other, you're also doubling the amount of staff that they have to be with, right? So staff needs to have lunch themselves, and they need to have a place to have lunch, and staff needs to, and so we need people to be able to watch over children. So if you were able to eat 3 feet apart, you could utilize the space a lot more efficiently. But when you're using 6 feet as a social distancing, you're calling on multiple rooms, and we just don't have the staff to both eat and watch the students themselves. And once you go to a full day, people are required by federal law to have a lunch. So we have to do that. And the 6 foot is what makes it difficult. We went back to the health official several times and brought up different ways of, for example, some of the principals came up with the idea of eating every other row so that a child could sit next to another child, but whoever has their face mask off, if the child next to him is only 3 feet away, that does not fit the distancing. So we went back and forth with that several times. Our principals are constantly coming up with different ideas. And then we go back to the health officials and have them help us interpret the guidance.
I understand the space, but as far as personnel, can we hire more lunch aides? Can we ask for parent volunteers to come in to watch the kids for just the lunch periods? I understand we can't add more space, or maybe without the tent type situation, but space is limited. But if it's about adding more personnel,
we could certainly look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Jackie, can I ask I just want a little clarification on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we had said that we're planning for everyone to have the same lunch period at the high school. So I just wanted clarification on that, what that looks like if we're able to go back to a full day. Hopefully that's what it'll be. So how do 2,800 kids eat lunch at the same time?
Yeah, so one of the things I just want to reassure everyone is that in many suburban high schools, particularly high-performing high schools, they also have a one-period lunch period. In fact, where I was at Morristown High School for 12 years as superintendent, I inherited back in 2002 a one-period lunch that was running for a number of years, and it's still running today. I know Chatham High School also has one-period lunch, and many, many, many high-performing high schools have the one-period lunch. And there's no high school that was ever built to house the entire population of students in a single cafeteria setting.
Right.
So kids eat all over the building, but the benefit of having everyone at lunch, and I have to preface this, this is a choice being driven by the ability to pivot during a potential COVID crisis.
No, I understand that.
But so the reason we're comfortable with doing the one-period lunch is because we wouldn't be by far the first district, particularly suburban districts, to have the one-period lunch. And during that time frame, children are all over the building. There are all your administrative staff have to be on duty, and there may be a need for some additional cafeteria aides, but things like school clubs generally take place during the lunch period because it's an hour-long lunch period. And just about, I haven't come across a district that was that went to a one-period lunch and then left it again because they didn't like it. So it is something that is unique, or was unique a long time ago, but we're a little bit behind the curve here. I think that if we were in different times, I would recommend that you look at pushing it out a year before you implement it. But unfortunately, I think it would not be responsible for us to plan for the possibility that we could be back in a COVID situation at some time next year. I hope
No,
we're
I
not.
understand that. And just to be clear, I'm not opposed to it. I just could not envision it. And the idea of doing clubs at lunchtime is really interesting to me. I think that's a good idea.
And
I just didn't know what it would
extra
look like.
extra help as well. I can say that the first time I saw it, I was a little bit shocked, but after you work with it, the other benefit of it is that no one, in your typical high school with multiple lunches, there's constant movement from somewhere around 10:30 to around 1 o'clock with the different lunch schedules going in and out. And one of the beauties of having a single lunch period is when lunch is over, everyone is in a class until the next bell rings, and then they go to another class. So there's not a constant movement in the hallway and a temptation for children to be in that hallway and not where they should be. So I just found it a good experience. Most the schools that I know of that tried it were all happy with it, and it's something that I think we need to plan for in case of the pandemic.
Got it. Thank you.
Jackie, I have one quick thing.
Sure.
I know we had discussed this previously. Have you thought about perhaps, because of the way our high school is set up, and middle school too, for that matter, maybe thinking outside the box and maybe have a tent or two somewhere in the vicinity? I know it would require more people to be out there, adults, supervision and all of that. But just to limit the activity in and around or inside the building, maybe have tents, if the weather is nice, children can go outside and eat, just to accommodate everyone and to fulfill the 6-foot distancing.
Tents, benches, etc.
Yeah.
The benefit of an open, a California-style school.
Exactly.
in good weather.
In good weather, exactly. Yep. I mean, if it is even raining, we can have panels and all of that, but it's something to look at.
Yep.
So Dr. Ficara, just to continue along that line, are tents possible? Because I was under the impression that we were not able to do that. So if that's an option, obviously, I think we should really explore it in more depth.
Well, so I think tents are possible as long as they are, it's an appropriate tent for housing children in a school setting with the right approvals from, you just can't put children in any space you want. But I think, AJ, at least my interpretation is that, it wouldn't be the tents would be something you could take advantage of on a warm day, on a pleasant day, but it wouldn't be something you could rely upon for a January, February situation, or December, January, February situation. So you couldn't have heated tents. It would be purely, if we're going to be outside and we want to be out of the sun, we could have a little tented area that would be more for the purposes of shade than for protecting someone from the elements.
Right.
So this isn't really,
Not like we're not looking at wedding tents, you know, where someone would have an outdoor wedding and the tent would be there for, if it rained or shined or snowed or what have you. That would be something that would be quite expensive, and we would need all sorts of approvals. So I don't think of the tent as an all-purpose room that just happens to be outdoors. I'm thinking along the lines of a nice day tent where students can go outside or even in a drizzle and not get wet. But we couldn't rely on it as another cafeteria.
okay, so it's not an alternate space, like
Correct.
another building or anything.
We're enhancing the outdoors, is what.
Okay.
Sort of like
I just think
outdoor
it's
benches.
important people understand that,
Good point.
because I know the question has come up a number of times from the public, and I think it's a good question, but, you know, I think it's important that they understand why we can't do this.
I have another one, just a thought too, Tom, is I can ask Paulina and Miramira about the lockers. I want to ask how many times they've used their lockers in the high school, by chance. Can you hold a number of on one hand how many times you use your locker? So we have a plethora of lockers. 0. They're saying 0. So they've been seniors. So 4 years at the high school, 80 days times 4 years at the high school. They haven't used their locker once, which is kind of interesting. We have those lockers in the hallway, and expanding the eating cafeteria. They make drop-down wall tables, even for small meetings or gatherings or expanding classroom space. As an option, take them out and put something in there. I mean, let's think outside the box. Use the space we have. We have hallways which are 10 feet wide, drop-down tables, small group meeting, things like that. You've got the space available. So it's time to knock our heads, look what we use and what we don't use, put to use the other one, get our architects involved, get some people thinking. I mean, there are 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 lockers at the high school. And walking down there's on both sides, it's a lot of space to gain back and use. So something to think about. Let's be creative. Let's push it. We can get this done.
I have a non-lunchtime question. If everyone else is done with their lunchtime questions. One recommendation that was brought up a few months ago is the virtual academies. Is that something that is still being considered or worked on for next year in the event that we have people that want to continue on virtual, but not impact our in-person students?
So Karen was heading up a team to look at that. If we have to go in, if we're in the same situation, that we would try to avoid having teachers teach live and virtual simultaneously and try to have a virtual academy. I don't know what the status of that is now. I think Karen's got multiple irons in the fire, but that will be something if, and we hope we don't have to, if we ended up in a situation where there was massive numbers of virtual students, again, we would look towards having a virtual academy.
Just a quick question about that. What if there's not like a lot of students that want it, but there is a certain amount of the population that needs it? I'd hate to have kids falling behind if there's a situation where they can't get back. Could you just give a little more information on the virtual academy stuff, or did I misunderstand what you meant by that?
No, so what we were doing was, it became clear to us midway through the year that teachers would have preferred not having to have both virtual and in person, and found it fatiguing and complicated and just a difficult situation. So at that time we said, if we're in the same situation again next year, how do we look at creating virtual academies so that we could begin not by trying to take children in one school and lump them by grade, since there may not be enough, and it made it more complicated, that we would take children and say, if you want virtual, you're in a virtual classroom, in a virtual school, and you're no longer in your neighborhood school. And we would go and move in that direction. At the same time, things started to loosen up, as well as flare up, oddly enough. So we're getting kind of mixed signals from the state government and the federal government, where we were reducing the distance at the elementary school level, but simultaneously being told we're in a hot spot. If we continue, so it looks like there's the possibility of two paths that we could end up going on. One would be we continue to open up to the point where we have 5 days a week, full day in person, in which we anticipate the vast majority of people coming back to, but still having some people with unique problems, and those would be held. We would, I know Governor Murphy said he did not want virtual school. I'm not sure what they meant by that for next year if when people come back. So what we would be looking at is a case-by-case basis of people who have unique either health problems or family problems that would that they would be requesting a virtual situation. So it's on two levels. One, if it's on a mass level, we would have virtual school. And if it was on an individual level or a very small minority of students, we would have to see if we had the numbers in a grade level. And then, of course, at the high school level, it's virtually impossible to have a virtual high school by itself because of the number of certifications required. So that those students would have to be tuning into the classroom via internet.
But this is only if we don't go 100% back 5 days a week, if the guidance says that you can offer virtual as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So so I'm sorry. Since we have to plan for all situations in the fall, planning for the, assuming that there is going to be some need for a hybrid, are we going to be able to plan to have as many virtual kids together in a virtual academy type setting without disturbing the in-person teachers? Like, is that what we're currently looking at, or?
Yeah, well, the way what we would be aiming at would be that if we had large numbers of students again, that we would have virtual teachers who taught virtually only.
Okay. Thanks.
I would like to go back to the tents for a second. So I know that they're fair weather tents. Is there, are we able to consider something like, we may not be able to have full day in person every day, but on the days where we have favorable weather, just like we have, we may have an early dismissal on a snow day, that we look at the weather for each day, and we either, if it's a favorable day, we can have a full day that day. If it's an unfavorable day, when we can't support lunch, that we do the early dismissal where we have the length of day that we have now. So at least maybe we get 25% of the days as full days. Is there any flexibility we could do in that regard?
Wouldn't that be a hardship for some working parents, though, not knowing day to day what their kids' schedule it would be?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think it's a creative idea. I just think it might cause problems for some families.
So the
And
logistics.
I think I'm sorry, go on.
Well, we'll look at whatever logistics that would take. So one of the things is to keep in mind that even though we are outdoors in this potential tent, you're still 6 feet apart. So there's a limited number of students who could fit in the tents. You still have to be 6 feet apart outdoors.
Understood, but I didn't know if we could add enough space that some kids might eat indoors and some outdoors to allow the 6 foot distancing with all the kids for the lunchtime.
And that's what I was talking about as well. Divide everyone up, spread them out.
And I
So,
know, Dr. Ficarra, you're doing a lot of work with the cabinet and with lots of people. So I think we're just trying to throw out ideas, and I know you've explored many things, if not everything that we brought up.
That's fine and appreciated. And just so you get a view on how we go about solving these problems as we come up with ideas like this, flesh them out in the cabinet, and then bring them to the principals to then bring them back to the schools. And actually most times they look very different when it comes back from the school, because they have to, actually look at what it looks like at the physical plant. So we are always open to ideas, and we will bring these to our school principals and pandemic teams and see what comes out.
Sounds great. Did anyone else have any other further questions? And Dr. Ficarra, I'm not even sure if we let you finish your report.
No, I turned it over to Karen as the end. She was the last part of the report.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Next, we are up to the president's report, and I'm going to apologize up front because this is longer than usual. But let me go ahead here. The first thing I wanted to do is to provide an update on the superintendent search. Applications closed on April 9th. We received 31 completed applications in response to our advertisement. All but 3 candidates met or exceeded our criteria. We had superintendents and assistant superintendents. We had 21 applications. For principals, vice principals, and assistant principals, we had 3 applications. Directors and supervisors, we had 4, and others, we had 3. Of the candidates that applied, there are 20 candidates that had earned doctorates. 23 candidates are from New Jersey, 4 from New York, 2 from Pennsylvania, 1 from Nevada, and 1 from Wisconsin. So we got a pretty wide swath of people applying. The board is now reviewing the candidates. We will meet tomorrow night to select which candidates will be invited for a first interview. Per our timeline, the first round interviews will take place next week. The search committee met to provide some initial input on candidates to consider interviewing and to determine the questions to be used in the first round of interviews based on input from the full board. The questions to select from were generated by Mrs. Thornton from the New Jersey School Boards, and she's the one that's we're working with for the search. She's our consultant. And those questions included input from the responses to the superintendent search survey. So it included both questions that she had as an expert in the field, as well as pulling some from the input we got in the surveys. And from the superintendent search survey, we received 308 community responses, and that was made up of 281 parents or guardians, 12 current students, 6 residents without school-age children, 8 who previously attended BR schools, and 1 with school-age children not attending BR. So again, 308 community responses. We had 119 staff responses. That included 88 teachers, 13 support staff, 3 paraprofessionals, and 15 other staff. We also had 5 administrative staff comprised of 3 central office and 2 building level staff reply to the survey. And Mrs. Levitt compiled some common themes from the survey responses. And so, Mrs. Levitt, I just wanted to thank you for putting that together. And it was just meant to pull out at a high level so that I could share with the community what we were seeing in the responses. So, per the surveys, some of the critical issues they felt we will face are effects of the pandemic, which obviously there's no surprise there, including academic needs of all different types of students after 1.5 school years of virtual and hybrid learning, social and emotional learning with decreased in-person instruction and peer interaction, mental health of students and staff, continued safety of our learning environments, including ventilation and other COVID mitigation strategies, ability to plan and adapt to this ongoing health crisis and others that might occur in the future, creating a smooth, safe, and effective transition back to full-time instruction in the fall. Then there was continuity of strong leadership in the district, including a superintendent who will stay for more than a couple of years. And I just want to interject here. So again, that the community is aware, on average in New Jersey, once the caps were removed, the average stay of a superintendent is 4 years in a school district. And in our school district, when Dr. Schilder was here, he was here for 7 years. Dr. Hayek was here for 1.5 years. And Dr. Lazovic was here for 4 years. And that averages to a little over 4 years. So we're right on a par with what is occurring in the rest of New Jersey. So I just wanted to make sure people are aware of that. Bringing together a divided community by improving communication to build trust and respect between all stakeholders. Addressing the mental health crisis by assessing needs and offering individual support, as well as social emotional learning integration across the curriculum. Promoting diversity and inclusion and reducing bias in both our curriculum and staffing. Striving for equity in education, inclusive of differences in race, religion, socioeconomic class, special needs, gender, sexuality, and more. Facilities maintenance and upgrades, including the HVAC systems. Attracting and retaining the highest quality teachers, including replacing those who left during the pandemic. School start times. Technology advancements, including possible virtual programming post-COVID. High academic standards with a curriculum that stays up to date, relevant, and inclusive. Full-day kindergarten. Supporting our unique AI and E programs. Academic integrity and cheating. Reducing bullying, including cyberbullying, and possible enrollment changes, either increases or decreases. So that spoke to critical issues that people felt we would be facing, and obviously that's quite a broad list that we have to consider. And then the other area I wanted to bring out were some of the characteristics of our desired superintendent. And I don't think, these are a surprise. Innovative, good listener, honest, open, inclusive, excellent communicator, flexible, not political, proactive, decisive, progressive, strong, risk taker, leader, compassionate, caring, approachable, collaborative, creative, makes fact-based decisions, visionary, experienced, personable, educated, inspiring, has integrity, empathetic, fair, motivated, someone who listens to and supports all stakeholders, including students, family, staff, and taxpayers, and most of all, someone who does what's best for the students. So, I think an excellent list of the desired attributes. So that's what I wanted to share from the superintendent search survey, and I know we're probably all going through it. It was probably 100 pages worth of documentation, so it's a lot for us to digest. And again, Mrs. Levitt, I want to thank you for giving us a summary here to get us going.
Jackie, can I make a quick comment about that?
Of course.
I just wanted to say to the public that, you know, we appreciate anyone who took the time to fill out, and there was a lot of really thorough, and I know it takes some time to fill it out. And there was a question, there was like the last question, the open-ended one, the response number 120, pretty much smack dab in the middle, said, "Did you read our survey answers up to this point? Yes, then thank you." And I just wanted to let the public know that we did. Like, I can't speak for everyone, but I read every word of it multiple times, and it matters to us to have your input. So thank you for taking the time.
And I think what you said, Jessica, was key. It matters to us. And thank you for interjecting there. As a reminder, the school calendar survey closes tomorrow. I know there have been many surveys, but that is because we genuinely want everyone's input to help inform our decisions. So again, to reiterate what Jessica just said, it is important to complete even if you are happy with how we currently establish the school calendar, so we do not change something that is working. We have had a great response rate to date, and really great. 2,599 people have responded to the calendar survey, and that was as of earlier today. So tremendous response rate. Of those, 2,036 are parents or guardians, and 563 are staff members. The deadline, just a final reminder for feedback, is tomorrow, April 14th, and we would love even more feedback than what we currently have. With respect to the district's response to the pandemic, as we continue to state, our stance has not wavered. We will persist in following the guidance of the CDC, New Jersey Department of Health, and our municipal health officer. So just reiterating what Dr. Ficara already stated. Lastly, I would like to share that I had the honor of being invited to speak at the Stop Asian Hate rally on March 23rd. Both myself and several board members attended this student-organized event. There were many speakers and approximately 200 in attendance at this well-run rally. For me personally, it was especially important to attend since I learned from being there. I realized there are significant events I do not know about from the Asian and Pacific Islander experience in America, and also about attending our schools. For this reason, I extended an offer to the lead organizer of the event to reach out to me. The devastation of hate against any group is something we as a society cannot tolerate. We must both educate ourselves and stand up to defend against it. Please continue to stay safe, healthy, and share a random act of kindness in the name of defeating hate. We are now up to the Vice President's report. Mr. Walker?
A little bit of our calendar update, planning calendar in April, as we plan the district calendar for the second year following, and the survey is going to be big input to that, so you make decisions moving forward appropriately. Your financial disclosure forms are due to the Ethics Commission this month. Hopefully everybody's in. I'm sure Peter has contacted anyone who hasn't done that, or Smith. We have the earliest budget hearing is April 24th. Peter, when's our budget hearing, final budget hearing?
It's on the 27th, I believe, is our meeting.
Okay, 27th, so we're doing that. We have the board's secretary evaluation. We will be doing that at the next board meeting. Thank you, everyone, for turning that in. In May, in the start of May, we have the end of year for staff reviews, all staff, non-tenured, tenured, and administrators in closed session. Rice notice is required. We issue the building climate surveys the first week of May. Approve the evaluation rubrics for next year. Review and approve the tri-annual technology plan go through 2019. So might want to be looking over that again. Maybe we can get that through FFT next month. Last day for the budget hearing is May 7th, which we should be okay on that. Last day to adopt the budget is May 14th. And then we also have to prepare for the CSA evaluation and closed session for that in May. That's all I have at the moment. And I did attend the Asian Hate rally, and it was quite enlightening. Mrs. Barlow spoke. I want to thank her for she spoke, and she focused on what the district was doing. We put it out there in our goals and the actions we've taken So I just want to thank you for being, and sharing that with everyone, Jackie.
Thanks, Barry. In terms of the climate survey, Dr. Ficara, are we doing anything in respect to that this year? And I apologize, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I can discuss it offline.
Yeah, I think that'll be under goal 2, and I'm sure we're working in some way in that direction, but I don't have the specifics right now.
That's fine, thank you. Next, we are up to committee reports. First is academic with Mrs. Gladstone.
Thanks, Jackie. Our scheduled meeting is the next week, April 21st at 6:30. However, in the light of the, we're, as you
Yes.
said, Jackie, we're going to be discussing interviews for next week. It could be 3 days in the middle of next week. So Mrs. Jones and the academic committee will have to have some flexibility and figure out, if we do have interviews for superintendent next Wednesday, we will reschedule the academic committee meeting.
Sounds good, thank you. Next is community relations, and our next meeting is April 15th of this week. And next we have finance, facilities, and transportation, Mr. Singer.
Thank you, Jackie. The committee held an emergency meeting on April 1st at 4:30 p.m. to address the ongoing billing dispute with Somerset County Ed Services Commission. In attendance was myself, Ms. Lee, Ms. Sandler, Ms. Barlow, Mr. Stars, Dr. Ficara, Mr. Lumsky, and Ms. Machado as board counsel. Ms. Machado went over the district's options, and the committee gave Ms. Machado and Dr. Ficara instructions to ensure continuity of services. Any other discussion on this topic might have to be in closed session because it involves a potential legal issue. If anyone has any other questions about it, please feel free to give either me or Peter a call. Happy to talk about it more. The meeting was adjourned at 5:26 p.m. We next met on April 6th at 5 p.m. In attendance was myself, Mr. Walker, Miss Lee, Mr. Stars, Dr. Ficara, and Mr. Lumsky. The committee reviewed the preliminary action items for the Board of Ed meeting that is taking place now, discussing specifically the purchase addendum, the bids, and the Aramark renewal that are on the agenda for this evening. Additional action items for the April 27th meeting were discussed, including the middle school fire alarm project award, the transportation bid, and the fence change for the generator project. The committee was also informed of county approval to advertise the budget for public hearing. The committee supported the action items, and if there are any questions on today's agenda, we can discuss them now, or we can wait until the action items are up for discussion. Anybody want to discuss now? Seeing none, moving on. Also on the business agenda this evening is the storage container donation by Bridgewater La Crosse for use at Turf 2. The committee discussed the logistics of the container donation, including responsibility for preparation of the container site, utilization of the containers, and the possible improvement of the aesthetics of the containers. The committee suggests approving receipt of the donation. Again, if there are any questions, we can discuss this now, or we can wait until that action item is up for approval as well. Anybody want to discuss it now? All right, I'll move on then. The committee received information on the numerous funding sources for pandemic-related items and the expenditure of same, which can be found on the committee folder for FFT in the board drive. Expenditures include supplies, which would include thermometers, wipes, sanitizing materials, and spray misters. It would also include PPE, which would include gowns, masks, face shields, and gloves. And finally, it includes technology, which we purchased a number of hotspots last year, and we've had quite the number of Chromebook purchases, as we all know. The committee discussed the additional sources of funding expected and the use of such funding, which has been largely discussed in our recent budget and curriculum presentations. No committee action is necessary at this time, but if anyone wants to talk about it, we can address any questions. All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on. The committee reviewed proposals to install cameras to cover the Basilone field, the baseball field, and the Turf 2 field. Discussion ensued regarding surveillance coverage at all district fields, but it was decided to move forward with this proposal at this time. The committee supports the $11,000 proposal for the cameras to be installed at the high school fields. Any questions?
I have questions. Two questions, actually. First is, what prompted the need for the cameras? And the second is, why not the 1,000 turf?
Peter?
Well, for the 1,000 turf, we do have actually viewpoints of the 1,000 turf from building 1,000,
Okay,
and the others do not. And the committee believes that since there's quite an investment in those specifically turf fields, that we should have them appropriately covered for security, safety purposes.
And we had further discussion about the other turf fields and, I'm sorry, the other district fields. And the reason that we wanted to move forward on this is because these specifically are turf fields and therefore harder to replace and more expensive to replace.
gotcha.
Anything else? All right. As Dr. Ficara discussed, we talked about block lunch needs. The committee was informed of the estimated equipment costs necessary to permit block lunch at the high school. This was put into context as part of the start to an investigative process for block scheduling, which, as Tom mentioned, is being looked at. There was also a discussion of additional costs for lunch that are associated with the change to block schedule, which includes additional staffing needs for supervision and kitchen support. The committee agreed that Mr. Stars should begin the process for bidding of the recommended equipment. Any questions on that? And if anyone has more questions on that, I think that at the next FFT meeting, we can continue to have that discussion as well. So you can feel free to email me and or Peter. Next, we discussed, we were informed that a candidate has been recommended for the BR Cares coordinator position. And in fact, that is up on the personnel addendum today. There is no recommendation at this time, but it's on personnel. Any questions on that? Nope. All right. A committee member inquired as to the status of the investigation of the logistics of holding in-person board meetings. The committee was informed that research is in progress, primarily focused on technology needs. Questions? All right. Lastly, at this point in the meeting, roughly 6:17 p.m., Mr. Walker exited the meeting and Ms. Barlow was thereafter joined at around 6:28 p.m. The committee was informed of the agreement reached with the Somerset County Ed Services Commission regarding the ongoing transportation billing dispute. Again, any questions on this would have to be largely discussed in closed session. And that's the end of that. The FFT meeting was adjourned at 6:31. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 3rd at 5 p.m. Jackie, before I move on to the next one, I just want to mention that the litigation committee has set up a meeting for May 17th. And we
Litigation or legislative?
I'm sorry, the legislative committee, hopefully not the litigation committee.
Thank you.
I
I didn't know if we had a new committee.
No. Legislation committee, sorry, has set up a meeting for May 17th, and we plan on discussing the HIV laws and looking into that, and just really starting a discussion more than anything else. So that's it. Thank you.
It's great to hear that they're convening and that we have a topic that's worth pursuing. Next, we have personnel. Mrs. Hurley.
We are scheduled to meet on Monday, the 19th.
Sounds good. You planned yours well to miss the interview onslaught. Any liaison or delegate reports? I'm sorry, did you say something? Okay. Liaison or delegate reports? Okay, next we're up to the first opportunity for public comment. And I just want to stress this is for action items only, which is section 12 of the agenda. So if you do want to speak, please state the action item that you're speaking about when you first start. So individuals and or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for action items only. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes during this period of the meeting. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 2 minutes duration or less, depending on the number of participants. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, public comments can be made via the following options. 1, joining the meeting at https://bit.ly/3do68hj, calling in at 415-655-0001, access code 182-630-7079. Or third, email or letter received by the board secretary prior to 6 p.m. indicating the person's desire for email to be read as public comment. And I'm just going to interject here that if you speak or send an email requesting to have a comment read, you must put your first and last name. Per board policy, it's not anonymous public comment. You do need to state your name. For tonight, I'm going to let it go because I am reminding people now, but going forward, that will be a restriction. And I'm bringing that up because we have received a couple of anonymous emails. Either of the first two methods will place you as an attendee of the meeting. During this public comment session, if you wish to speak, raise your hand if you are on the computer or press *3 to raise your hand from the phone. You will be moved to a panelist role so that you may provide your comments. Mr. Stars, is there any public comment at this time?
We have no emails that pertain to the agenda, the action items, but we do have one person with their hand raised, so let me unmute them.
Okay.
This is Christine. Christine, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a comment and a statement, a couple statements, and then I'm going to follow it up with a question.
Can I first ask, please, which agenda item you're addressing?
I don't know what agenda item is. Was it a part of the discussion tonight? It's part of the discussion tonight.
Okay, the discussion that we had earlier is not the action items. So for the discussion we had earlier, it would be part of the second opportunity for public comment. This would only be action items, which is section 12 of the agenda.
I only listened to this board meeting, so you're saying that I can't comment on this board meeting? Anything that was
You
spoken
can,
about?
but it's later in this. We have two opportunities for public
Oh, okay.
comment.
All
So
right,
you
I'll-
absolutely can. It's just a little later in the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Hold on.
Thank you. Mr. Stars, anyone else?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we'll close the first opportunity for public comment. We're now up to personnel 21-31. Is there?
The minutes. You missed the minutes.
Thank you, I did. For approval of minutes, we have March 23rd, regular session and closed session. Is there a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Miss Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Now we're up to personnel 21-31.
Okay.
Is
so
there
moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. There's a number of CST services and evaluations over the summer on this addendum, and I'm just curious if we can get some additional detail as to the scope of those. Hey, Jean, can you mute a second? Jean, can you mute? Thanks. Can we get some additional detail as to the scope of the CST services and evaluations over the summer?
The recommendations from the Department of Special Education was for the services that are typically summer services. I don't have all of the specifics about the information, but I can get you answers to any questions that you have. These are ones that my understanding is are fairly routine for the summer because we have to have summer staff available to evaluate students.
That's fine. I didn't know if it was routine or if it was because of the situation we're in. Thanks, Dan.
Oh no, right, yeah. So our 10-month, our staff is generally 10-month, but we have to have special education staff available during the summer, and so that's what this is about.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it.
I just had a comment. I wanted to say that I noticed that there was some student teachers on there already, and we had just started reinstating that. So I'm glad to see that, you know, it's for next year, but I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with working with universities to get some great students in.
Any other discussion?
On those summer for CST work, that's only if needed, right? Those aren't correct?
Correct, yeah. So all the timelines apply all 12 months of the year, and so generally speaking, if a student was at school, they would be if they were being recommended for a child study team referral, it would not happen on June 1st, where the timeline would run into the summer. But if that did happen, if a student came in or a parent referred to the child study team, the district still has the obligation to test the student in the timelines and code.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Abstain?
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Miss Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to curriculum 2119. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to business 21-104 through 108. Is
So
there a
moved.
motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
Quick question. The TTI environmental, that's business 21-105. That's for lead testing. Is this going to be the first time we've been testing since the last requirement? And is it because on the website it shows 2017 results?
Yes. So this is, they changed the regulation, and everybody basically has to do it again next year and every 3 years. It used to be 6 years.
Okay, so that's to go into contract with this company, and it will be for next September or as soon as the school year starts, or any time before?
Or, yeah, earlier than that. Yeah, July 1st or so. We're going to try to get started early.
But and the last time it was done in 2017, a few of the buildings and faucets and sinks had filters put in, so that's been an ongoing maintenance type of thing too, right?
Yep, those schools will be the first ones actually tested.
Great, thanks. And also a question on, hold on a second, the Aramark contract, which is the attachment of 21-111. Where it has the list of healthcare benefits for certain on this pricing, I just was kind of alarmed when I saw like 37%, 39%. I just wanted some context a little bit, like,
So their workers are actually unionized, and they have negotiated agreements that with our mark, and that's part of their plan.
so that's like an increase from last year, or what
The
is
total
that?
contract increase is only 1% for us, and that's
Right.
why we're trying to jump on it.
Okay, I see. But that 39% was just something they worked out with their own insurance?
Yeah, that's on their end.
Okay, but our side is just 1%. All right, that clears it up a lot better. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
A quick question on that Joe just brought to my attention. It says business 21-108, but then the bottom at the front of it says business 21-111. So should that be modified, or what's the
The attachment, yeah, the attachment should be 21-108.
Is
that
that a friendly
something-
modification? Do we need to?
Yeah,
do
that's
that?
just a typo. It's not a same attachment, just different number.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I just want to thank the anonymous donor, Hillside PTO, and Bridgewater Lacrosse for the gifts that were made. Mr. Stars, roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Miss Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to Special Services 21-34. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Give us a
Roll
little
call,
overview
please.
about this.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Give a little overview about this.
It was in gold notes.
And I guess, do you report back to us on how successful this is, or how do we measure this for next year? I'm sure it'll gain again, but is there a monitoring system throughout the year to make sure that this is moving in the right direction?
Yeah, the state and the county are the ones that indicate whether or not we need this corrective action plan. And basically, the corrective action plan is needed because of the implications for COVID on our semi applications and our semi reimbursement. So you might see actually the same thing next year as well, because it's the same impact.
That semi is it a parent filed form, or is it the district, or what is the? I think it's
Well, yeah, semi is a combination of both, but the parents have to agree to participate with it, to have their consent.
Is that something we can foster in a virtual reaching out and helping them do it, or I mean, what's the I know it's a pandemic, so it's easier face to face, but how do we?
Well,
do
I believe this was actually about the services, so we weren't able to provide, or they did not want the services virtually, and or couldn't happen in person.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Gladstone,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to other 2140 and 2141. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
And if there's any discussion needed here, we'll need to do that in closed session. Does anyone have any discussion that we need? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to policy 2137. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sandler,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Levitt,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. We're now up to the second opportunity for public comment. Individuals and/or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes during this period of the meeting. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 2 minutes duration or less, depending on the number of participants. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, public comments can be made via the following options. Joining the meeting at https://bit.ly/3do68hj, calling in at 415-655-0001, access code 182-630-7079, emailing or letter received by the board secretary prior to 6 p.m., indicating the person's desire for email to be read as public comment. Either of the first two methods will place you as an attendee of the meeting. During this public comment session, if you wish to speak, raise your hand if you are on the computer or press *3 to raise your hand from the phone. You will be moved to a panelist role so that you may provide your comments. And again, please, when you speak, say your first and last name, and then you can proceed. And I know we've got a lot of comments that were sent in to be read. And so based on that, I'm going to limit the time to 2 minutes per speaker. Mr. Stars, I guess also people that want to speak, if you could please raise your hand at this time. And Mr. Stars, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, we'll start with Christine again, since she, and then I'll jump into the reading. Christine, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You can state your whole name.
Christine Livesay. I do have a concern. I'm going to make some statements here that are based on scientific facts and data. Asymptomatic spread is extremely rare. A study of 10 million showed that it didn't actually exist at all. And masks are proven to be a health risk to children or anybody, actually. All peer review and randomized control studies on masks show they are not effective in preventing the spread of a virus, but in fact, making it easier to contract the virus. Also, the FDA approved masks under an emergency use authorization for use of the general public. It's prohibited by federal law to require or mandate something that's improved, a product approved under emergency use. It also requires informed consent. Thomas Ficara, you are willingly breaking the law. You're violating 2 federal laws and you're putting children's health at risk. You're already planning on having masks on children's faces in September. 6-foot distance. You're following guidelines and recommendations. You are choosing to follow this. Why can you get on board a plane and sit next to each other with masks on? The CDC doesn't recommend that, do they? Why are you putting children's health at risk and violating federal laws? That's my question. I'm actually going to call Child Protective Services very soon. You people need to figure something out before September, because I will not consent to my children going to school restricting their oxygen, breathing in their own bodily toxic waste, poisonous to their bloodstream, is a health risk, and it also risks, it's a health risk to their psychological, mental, and emotional health as well. So, did you mute me the whole time?
Are you done with your comment?
Did you have me muted, or did you have me muted that whole time?
No, you were on air. Mr. Stars,
Yeah,
is the 2 minutes
question.
up at this point? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your comments, Christine. Who else do we have, Mr. Stars?
We have a Joseph Adore. Joseph, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Joseph Adore. Come September, if you've got a set of family members at home who are high risk for COVID contraction and, could be a very serious medical risk for that, what options would there be for virtual learning for students who may not necessarily have any medical conditions, but puts, people at home at high risk for contracting it? What are the virtual options that are going to be available for that particular scenario?
I just want to make sure people know, Mr. Adore, thank you for asking your question, but this is not a back and forth. So we would take that question, and Dr. Fakara talks with the staff, and for frequently asked questions, we'll address those comments like at a future board meeting or through other mechanisms. So I just want to make sure that people know when they ask a question, this would not be the forum that you would actually get a response. But we are listening to what everyone is saying.
Yeah, well, I understand. This is kind of just our feedback and concerns. But these are serious concerns where children at school coming home could put other people at risk at home who have other health issues that can cause death or severe hospitalization. And in this particular situation, what are the I guess, would the school be willing to sign waivers that, would make them responsible if something happened, because kids are being forced to be sent back to school come September without virtual option? So, there's been a lot of different back and forth with Governor Murphy. At one point, he said everybody was going back to school come September, and then on March 30th, he retracted that on national television, saying that there will be virtual options. So, there's, myself included, there are a lot of parents in the district, who have children who are perfectly fine and healthy, but people at home are at risk for contracting the COVID and having a very serious reaction to it. So these are concerns that, not just for children who have medical issues coming to school, but people at home who have medical issues, but not necessarily the student themselves. And the concern is that everybody follows the guidelines and all that, wearing masks and keeping safe distances between each other.
Thank you, Mr. Odor. We hear the concern.
Thank you.
Mr. Stars?
Next is Marjorie Meyer. Marjorie, you there? Oops, let me unmute her. Are you there, Marjorie?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. I'm disappointed yet again at the lack of forethought and frankly broken promises. You spent the last meeting assuring all who listened we would be back 5 full days in September. Many of us knew that was a hope and not reality, but were dismissed as negative and unsupportive. I hope many of the parents listening tonight realize now what was said and what is really happening. There is no plan to get the kids back to school in September unless all the guidelines change. Even if the current 3-foot guidelines exist instead of 6, our current attendance in person is only about 50%. Come September, my guess is it will be much higher. Are we really ready to admit now we may be hybrid again for another year? Is this really the first meeting in 13 months that different ideas were suggested? You're just beginning to talk about virtual academies? We've been asking about some of these ideas for months. Also, your numbers for the middle and high schools are very misleading. When I spoke with Ms. Steffner, I asked outright how many are most classes over. She said most are by 1 to 2 kids, a few 3, and at the most 4. That's very different number from 689, which is counting the same children multiple times. The real figure you need to explain is how many are over per time block and can they be put in pods. In addition, the numbers in New Jersey are headed down again. What's the plan when we go to moderate? We should be ready to pivot to 3 feet when that change happens. I will say again, though I fear it falls on deaf ears due to the board's personal feelings and fears. Guidelines are just that, guidelines. Our school is choosing the most restrictive guidelines. Others are not. For example, Dr. Fakar insists on 6 feet distancing desk to desk, while the CDC shows pictures of children to children. He claims this is in case they lean over to talk. However, given that 15 minutes of sustained contact is necessary to quarantine, plus the original guidance said 6 feet unmasked and 3 feet masked, it's clear to me and most others that this is beyond what is necessary. That is one example, just one, of how we could easily get a few more kids in the classroom.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Mr. Stars?
Next is Swapna Dixit. Swapna, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. This is a message back from various governors in the Northeast, from Governor Phil Murphy, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, Delaware Governor, Connecticut Governor, Rhode Island Governor, and Massachusetts Governor. This was back in November of 2020. Medical research, as well as the data from Northeastern states from across the country and from around the world, make clear that in-person learning is safe when the appropriate protections are in place, even in communities with high transmission rates. In-person learning is the best possible scenario for children, especially those with special needs and from low-income families. There is also growing evidence that the more time children spend outside of school increases the risk of mental health harm and affects their ability to truly learn. Please, let's take this into consideration. This is from last year in November. And as Ms. Meyer had mentioned, these are the questions that the Board of Ed has been bringing up the last time and this time. Finally, thank you that you're bringing up these questions that we've been bringing up to you guys since last year, early this year. These are hard questions that needed to be asked of the superintendent. We should be planning now for the fall, but now you guys are asking these questions. These questions needed to be asked months ago. We've been asking these and it's been dismissed, and now you're asking them. Please, we're begging you guys, we're begging you that these children need to be back in school full time. Will it take a child's death for maybe you guys to wake up? Please, that's all we're asking you. You guys are finally asking the hard questions. Teachers, parents, everybody needs to plan for the fall now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixit. Anyone else?
No, I'll go on to the, see another one, Howard Teichman, hold on. Mr. Teichman, are you there? Mr. Teichman? Mr. Teichman? Okay. I'll come back after I read the so first is from Laura Valerio. Hello, as a concerned parent, I'd like to know what the plan is for the fall. I would hope and expect that the kids will be back full day, including lunch, 5 days a week, every week. Thank you, Laura Valerio. Next one is from Jean Harley Frick. Good afternoon. Looking forward, I will have a 7th grader in September. Will she continue to be able to go to school 5 days? Middle school and high school parents have been asking for more in-person time for months. It's not unreasonable to start thinking about September 2021 since the Board of Ed has been discussing the 2022-23 calendar. Thank you, Jean Frick. Next is from Elise Wolf to Dr. Vaquera, members of the Board of Ed. While I'm pleased to see my fourth grader back in school 5 days a week, I'm one of those parents that has given up hope for seeing my child back in school 5 full days a week this school year. Based on the current guidance from Governor Murphy that students will not be allowed to attend school virtually in the fall and must attend in person, and the guidance from the CDC and other pediatric and health organizations that all call for a return to school, I'm hopeful that our district students will be back in school for full 5 days, including lunch, for the 21-22 school year. However, that hope of 5 full days a week for next school year slowly evaporates with each day that passes without communication from the district as to a plan for bringing students back in person full-time. If the distancing guidelines are reduced or further reduced or disappear altogether, then great, we can have a return to normalcy in the classrooms and schools. But what happens if the guidance remains at 3 feet? What is the district's plan for September if the guidance does not change? Planning must start now with the assumption that the guidance will not change rather than a hope that it will change. Plans need to be put in place now for a reduced number of students in the classrooms while still having room in the buildings for all students, including the likely influx of first graders, since so many students would otherwise be in district or at private full-day K programs. Plans need to be put in place now for lunch periods. Plans need to be put in place before the teacher contracts are finalized so that they cover any changes to the norm that are needed. Plans need to be put in place based on what we know now and not based on what we hope may happen in a few weeks or a few months from now. As someone with one child in a district and one child at a private kindergarten program, I am seeing firsthand the difference between having a plan and not having one. My child in private kindergarten has gone to a full day of school every single day since September without incidents. She is thriving. My child in the district is lucky to have a wonderful teacher who is nurturing and pushing her to do her best, but there's no doubt that she is not where she should be and that there are hours of lost learning each week. The district must stop looking at the pandemic through the lens of we can't or we hope, and instead through the lens of how do we make this work. All students deserve to be back full-time in September, and is respectfully requested that the Board of Ed communicate a full-day plan for September based on the current guidelines, with the hope that we can someday soon return to normal. Thank you, Elise Wolf. Next is from Lisa Hanlon. Dear board members, unfortunately, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting, but I am hoping my concerns have already been addressed by parents or echoed the hereafter. This year has brought about many challenges. Obviously, most notably, the virtual aspect of educating our children. When the COVID crisis first hit, many of us had no devices or not enough for large families. BRRSD rallied and came through with the loaner Chromebooks. We are grateful. Classes, homework, even phys ed was done virtually. Then we went into hybrid mode. Still, many classes were held virtually and homework was done online only. When we had the blizzard this past winter, students were only given one snow day. Some of us had no internet service, but we plugged along because it was a mandate. Now we are in our last marking period. Many of our children are going back to school 5 days per week, and we have been asked to return our borrowed devices on Thursday, April 15th. Our children are already way behind, and without their laptops will now be forced to give up a year-long review, homework assignments they have been accustomed to doing, and websites they have aided learning. My other concern is what happens if there's another school quarantine. If any of the schools are closed due to an outbreak, even if just for 10 days, how do we return to virtual learning without devices? I personally feel BRRSD is pulling the plug on this far too quickly. Have we not learned from this pandemic that nothing is a sure thing? I believe families who need their children's Chromebooks should be allowed to keep them at least until the end of the school year. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my concern in a public forum. Lisa Hanlon, mom to Bradley Gardens, first grader. Next is from Sonia Chartowich. Hi, I am a parent of 2 children in the district. Is the district planning to bring all students back to school for 5 full days of in-person learning, including lunch in September, under the current guidelines as issued by Governor Murphy and the CDC? Parents need to know what lies ahead in the fall, as now is the time when private school admissions are being finalized. If I am unable to trust in our district's plan for the fall, unfortunately, I will be forced to remove my one son who requires more in-person time for his style of learning from the district. It has already been accepted to a private school, but I've delayed finalizing because I'm waiting on a written plan from our district. If current guidelines remain, what is the plan? If guidelines change, what is the plan? There should be various if-then situation plans written up. Do we have those? If so, what are they? Please share with the community, as many are getting restless. When the district has no shared plan, families cannot plan. How are we planning to get all of our students back full-time? Thank you, Sonia Chartowich. Next is Parents for Virtual Choice. Dear Board of Education and Dr. Vaquera, we are a group of parents and community members who support virtual choice as part of BRRSD's future. We come to the table requesting a partnership between all stakeholders as we continue to advocate for our students and staff. There are many valid points of view to this conversation which deserve considerations. Please do not mute ours. Many of us continually express our thanks to staff, Dr. Ficara, and the Board of Education for their services this past year. However, there still is work to be done regarding the potential of a full return to in-person learning in September. Many families without health hazards feel unsafe. Many parents are high risk and feel unsafe. Many in the community have special needs children and feel unsafe. An in-person return during a pandemic is not safe for these students and in some cases fatal. There are many students in the district who are thriving with the current full-time virtual model, unlike their prior in-person performance. We fully support those parents who wish for their children to be in person all day, as we hope that they support our wishes. We should all be receptive to all parts of this new world. While the COVID world is ever changing, our thoughts remain the same for now. We truly do not feel safe at the possibility of having no virtual choice come September. We ask that you adopt legislation to allow us to continue our virtual choice come the new school year and for the future. Only allowing those with health conditions to have a chance at remote learning is not fair. Why not a choice for all? Leaving a decision of who is allowed to have a virtual experience for September to district physicians warrants extreme caution. Is a district physician a board certified pediatrician? Does this person have the ability to look further than a piece of paper and understand in depth the potential consequences for denying a child remote instruction? Does this physician have certifications in all areas of practices? Knowledge and education are the key here. Only parents and their children, pediatrician and specialists should be deciding what is best for their children. We are asking for something other than medical exemptions and home instruction. 22 states have adopted a virtual component. Should we not adopt to the times and move forth like everyone else with this option? What about the children whose parents are compromised and those who do not feel safe? Do they not have a say? How do the teachers really feel about the... Okay. Next is from Melanie Santos. What is the percentage of in-person students at the high school for fourth marking period? Will there be a head count completed at the high school to see if the in-person numbers in fact don't allow for more in-person days? 2, are you following the guidance from middle school, high school at 6 feet? If so, when would this be reevaluated? As per the NJDOH and the updated guidance, it shows that 3 feet would be considered when moderate infection rates. Are you specifically following Bridgewater's infection rate? If not, what report are you following? If the transmission rate drops to moderate, will 5 half days be provided? As per the guidance of 3 feet should allow for more in-person for the students at the drop of a dime? How do you plan on 5 full days in the fall under the current guidance? If lunch can't be trialed now, how will it work in the fall? Transparency of this plan needs to be provided. When will this happen? As a parent within the district with multiple children, I can firsthand see the continued hard work our teachers are doing day in and day out. September cannot look like this, and they deserve the same transparency as the parents are requesting. Thank you. Melanie Santos. Next is from John M. Since the beginning of the school year and up until today, there continues to be a lack of trust and communication between parents, school district administrators, and members of the Board of Education in Bridgewater Raritan. Board members have each been asked specifically, what are you actively doing to get our students back into the classroom 5 days a week? Not one board member has answered that question privately nor publicly. I'd like to give them another opportunity to answer it tonight. And while they are not required to answer, I'd like to remind the public that they certainly may answer questions if they wish to do so. Honestly, in my opinion, no answer would imply that our elected board members have sat complacent in the school year and not acted in the best interest of those students who so desperately need in-person instruction. In addition, I would like each board member to state how many virtual classrooms they have observed this year. I would hope that their decisions are based off of data and observations pertaining specifically to the students of Bridgewater Raritan. Have you seen firsthand what this school year has looked like? Beyond what you may have caught from your own children's experiences? Every student has had a different experience this year with virtual learning. While some have thrived, others are barely hanging on academically and emotionally. It's not too late to show that you care. Please do more. Finally, is the district planning to bring all students back to school for 5 full days of in-person learning, including lunch, in September under the current guidelines as issued by Governor Murphy and the CDC? Thank you, John M. Next is from Christine Jupiter. Good evening. In article after article published in the last few months nationwide regarding school reopenings, there's one theme that dominates: lack of trust in the communication between parents, school district administrators, and members of boards of education, and a feeling that they are no longer share a common goal of assessing the needs of all students, determining a course of action that best meets their collective needs, and seeking out the most successful methods to achieve this goal. We have talked to numerous community members in Bridgewater who have given up on this year and have tried to convince themselves that our kids will be fine. They look to next year with confidence that our children will all be back in school full time. The district has said it is planning to bring everyone back to school for 5 full days of in-person learning in the fall. For those of us who have asked questions and attended board meetings, we know that while the district has in fact said repeatedly that it is planning for full days of in-person learning, It has also repeatedly made clear that the plan to do so is based on the hope that current guidelines will change. I sense that there is a misconception here. In an attempt to fix this massive communication failure in our district and restore the trust that has subsequently been lost, I respectfully request a simple answer to a simple question that has been asked of you countless times by me and numerous stakeholders in our community. Is the district committed to providing a plan now to bring all students back to school for 5 full days of in-person learning, including lunch, in September under the current guidelines as issued by Governor Murphy and the CDC? Thank you, Christine Juker. Next is from Ryan Woodring. The board continues to say we are planning to reopen 5 full days of school in the fall. This is not good enough. We need to know that we are reopening for 5 full days of school in the fall, not just planning to. We need to know that we will be reopening under current guidelines, or for that matter, have a plan to reopen if things actually get worse. We cannot plan to reopen only if guidance improves. Our kids lost a full year. They are at a competitive disadvantage to those in private schools as well as those in other states and other countries. What is the cost of this? How are you going to compensate my child for your lack of effort? Figure it out. Ryan P. Woodring. And the last one I have is from Adam Juker. Dear members of the Bridgewater Board of Ed and BRRSD administration, thank you for all the sacrifice of your time to operate in such a difficult period of our lives. As was mentioned at a recent rally to return our students and teachers to a full 5 days in-person schooling, this is not us versus you or them. We care deeply about our children and our teachers and should all be working to ensure they are safe and healthy. This includes their mental health as much as their physical health. The public has asked repeatedly for a review of the Board of Ed and administration's plans to achieve this goal and have seen bits and pieces of activities, but no real plan. Recently, the CDC concluded that we can safely open schools and reduce the distance between students to 3 feet. I understand there are nuances to the guidance, but the goal of our board and administration should be to get all our children back into school full-time ASAP. During an email conversation with the Board of Ed a few weeks ago, it was made clear that CDC update includes the caveat that in middle schools and high school, students should be at least 3 feet apart in areas of low, moderate, or substantial community transmission. In areas of high community transmission, middle and high school students should be 6 feet apart if cohorting is not possible. This was followed by a 1-week view of COVID cases in Bridgewater, and this would put Bridgewater in the red category. This should have said orange and not red. The most recent data now shows our country is back in the yellow moderate category and trending rapidly lower. Dr. Ficara recently shared that we can get our children back to the school in the fall unless the guidance changes. Does this mean you have no plan to return our children to in-person learning in the fall and only hope to do so if things return to normal around us? As a famous person once said, hope is not a plan. The goal of our Board of Ed and administration should be to do everything they can to get our kids back into the school full time. In this case, simply agreeing that the CDC guidance has been misinterpreted in the past to mean 6 feet from desk to desk should it be immediately addressed to be 6 feet or 3 feet as it now seems possible from person to person. You can make this change and impact our children positively for the balance of this year if you really wanted to. More importantly, since the board's current attention seems to be more on 23 school calendar and not on getting our kids back to school, what is your plan for the fall should the guidance not substantially change to get our children back to school? It is a simple question that this board and administration has done. Okay. Those are all the emails that received, and there is a one more member of the public that looks like they want to speak. Ivana, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could state your full name.
Ivana Gvozdenovic. I have 2 children, and I would just like to say that if any of us in the private sector had plans like this, we would have been bankrupt and fired by now. It's very frustrating with children that there is no plan for them going to school. They're mentally suffering. And we don't need mental health professionals to address the issues. We need kids to follow regular social behavior that is meant for children to be followed. And this is going to be long-term damage if they do not return to school full-time 5 days a week starting September. So we demand more from the Board of Education as far as planning. Planning is not, it has to be put in place because there's a lot of working parents and it is financially hurting families to plan and take care of these kids while we have to work. Most of our companies are open and it seems to be that we're picking and choosing what guidelines we're following, where it's convenient, and something has to happen soon. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else, Mr. Stars?
I don't believe so. I believe that is all.
Okay, I'm now going to close that portion of the meeting for the second opportunity for public comment. I just did want to point out that there was both a parent group letter that Mr. Stars read, as well as another email where the person just had their first name and first initial of their last name. So in the future, letters like those will not be read because they will be considered anonymous. We need the first name and the last name to be able to share it here. So I just want to give people forewarning because we really do want to hear the comments.
Excuse me,
Next,
Jackie, I have a question.
Jackie?
In the when we were in person, it was always state your full name and address.
yes.
Did we drop that for virtual, or we just kind of forgot about it? I mean, we didn't change
Well,
the policy,
it's
right?
a good question, and I don't have the policy in front of me, so I think I would need to go back and verify if we need to do both.
Okay, thanks.
So, and so that will be checked into.
Jackie, I had a few comments on some of the questions that were asked.
Sure,
May I?
absolutely.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for their comments and their input. It's very helpful. Someone had asked about virtual options. I do know that Governor Murphy made a statement and then qualified that statement. I just want people to understand that we will do everything we can to make sure that people with hardships and special situations do have the availability to have a virtual program. I think the guidance is still developing on that. I could not imagine that virtual options for students with personal problems, family problems, et cetera, will just completely be eliminated. I think it's here to stay in certain circumstances. So those people with unique problems, I wouldn't be too apprehensive. We'll deal with them on a case-by-case basis and with empathy. It was pointed out, someone indicated that my middle school numbers that I presented tonight were incorrect. Those middle school numbers were given to me by the middle school administration directly. I didn't change them. They were a cut and paste. Also, there was a lot of, a number of comments about the difference between desk to desk versus nose to nose. We interpreted desk to desk, but in terms of separation of 6 feet, but nose to nose would only allow for 1 or 2 children more at the most, and would not have in any way changed our hybrid schedule to a full in-person schedule. It was also pointed out that the governor said, a number of governors said, and I'm very happy this was pointed out, that in-person learning is the best, which we agree, and can be safe. And Governor Murphy then went on to issue guidelines for a safe school environment, how to keep children safe in that environment. And that's what we follow. Additionally, I know there's been a lot of confusion because there are different colors used between the CDC and the state of New Jersey for what's a high level. So we under the direction, under the guidance of the New Jersey Department of Health, follow the regional risk levels. Now, our entire state is under a high risk level at the moment, but we follow the regional risk levels. That's as per Kevin Sumner, our Bridgewater Township health official, who advises us on when we get some sort of conflicting advice that can be gray, as in the CDC versus the NJDOH guidance, where they use different color codes and different metrics. That's when we are advised by the Department of Health to go directly to our local health official, which we have, a gentleman named Kevin Sumner, who we have a lot of faith in. He's the Bridgewater Township Health Officer. And so we follow a regional plan, a regional risk level based on his advice. But in any event, the entire state is at a high level, according to the NJDOH. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ficara, for addressing that. Next, we're up to old business. Does anyone have any old business? Yes, Mr. Singer?
I just wanted to reiterate, we've asked for this under the prior administration. I want to reiterate it under this administration. We'd like to get more information on what's going on in the different schools. I think it's wonderful that we get an update from the high school at each meeting. But I know that I can't speak for us, that I would love to know what's going on at the other schools. And sometimes I feel like we don't get that. In addition, there's a lot going on at the high school that many in the community might not know about and might be happy to support, including the things we learned about today, which would include the Film Fest, which can be found at thebasie.org/filmfest, and the BR Strong apparel, which can be found at brstrong.itemorder, all one word, .com/sale. I'd like to thank Ms. Winchuck and Rin Meyer for giving me that information. So is there any better way that we can let our community know what's going on at the schools with these wonderful ways that the community can participate in very many different things? I know that we get the what's going on in the community emails, but things like these seem to fall through the cracks.
So, Mr. Singer, I will try to answer that. We have a community relations meeting on Thursday, and that's probably a great topic for it. So I don't have any answers, but I definitely think it's something we could talk about. Any other old business?
I know Steve mentioned in his report that, we're looking into being able to have our in-person board meetings. The technology is kind of the I'm going to call it a stumbling block for now. I just, if possible, I'd like to have an update on exactly where we are and what we're looking for, what we need still at the next meeting. It's just what happened with Tom tonight. This doesn't work well. We really need to try to get back in person as much as possible, as soon as possible. I mean, that's just one example.
Okay. So that's a topic I'm assuming we can take back to FFT to see if we can get a more detailed presentation next time.
Well, yeah, or just a little something from administration. I don't know if it really has to come from the committee. I just mentioned Steve because he happened to mention it and it was on my list.
Okay.
So I don't expect him to have to do anything really.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. So we'll look to the administration. Any other old business? Jean, did I see your hand go up or no? Sorry. Okay, how about any new business?
Okay, so yes, I do. Jackie, I actually have a question regarding the public comments. So is there any particular reason that we have the public comments of the action item to, on the first session and then the regular on the second section? Because, I think that logically, to me, I think if we can swap it, that would make more sense because, after the president's report, superintendent's report, right? So people would have questions. So that would be the good time for people or for parents to ask questions that relate to the reports. And then after that, we have, talk about the action items and everything. So then so we can open the public comments for the action item after all the discussion. So that is my, it's just my thoughts. I don't know what, the particular reason that we have this arranged disorder, but is it possible or, like we swap it? And also, I know parents are more, especially at this time, they are more concerned about what's going on right now is like other than the action items. So, sometimes we have very long meeting, and then if there's no policy violation, is it possible to just swap the order?
And I think, go on. I thought I heard someone.
Well, I think traditionally that the first comment is on the action items to give the public an opportunity to speak on the items that the board is about to vote on before they actually vote. So from what I understand, from my experience, that has been the traditional reason for opening with the public comment. These are unusual times, and the pandemic has shifted the focus in a lot of ways away from the action items on the board's agenda, but that's where millions of dollars have spent and curriculum is approved and all the inner workings and the outer workings and infrastructure of the district is taking place. So I think that's why the tradition has been there, to give the public an opportunity to say, I noticed this particular item and I don't think, or I do think you should vote for it. I understand how, after this meeting, it looks like the most important discussion would have been for the public at the end. But I think going forward, as you get, I won't say hopefully, but as we reasonably can assume, we will go to come out of the pandemic, the action items should take the highest priority for public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Ficara. Any other discussion?
I will comment on that as having been someone who waded through a lot of very long meetings to do the public comment at the end. I agree, though, with what Tom said. I understand the point that we need the public comments of the action items before we vote on them, to take them into consideration before the vote. So if anything, it would be both would be moved before instead of swapping them. And I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but.
Dr. Ficara, do you have any reaction to that, or?
Yes, there are some districts that have public comment session.
That have
only one public comment
okay.
session.
So what you're suggesting is combine them into one session.
Yeah, I mean, two sessions that follow each other so that we know that they're separated or whatever, but they could both be moved up. Or, I mean, honestly, the business part of the actual voting doesn't take that long of the meeting, so they're still going to have to wait a fair amount of time. Usually it's the superintendent, when it's a topic like this, it's the superintendent's and the discussion that follows that takes a long time.
So do we have any, Jill?
I mean, I appreciate all the comments, and I mean, after so many years, I agree with Dr. Ficara that we have to get things moving, and the purpose, just going to our bylaws and the purpose of a Board of Education and our role as board members is to, hear the recommendations from the superintendent to approve these things to run the district. That's the board business. And in the meetings is to allow the public to bear witness to our meetings in the public setting. And we allow for comment, which is great and appreciated. I'm thinking maybe we should have more, and we're going to probably be following up in community relations on Thursday, some more town hall meetings for the comments when there's important items like the pandemic or things that happened the past few years, any big changes. I think town halls where we're not going to have to be here till, wee hours in the morning also when we finally get to do our voting, because that's very important too, when we vote on issues that are important, spending, tens of thousands, tens of millions of dollars of the public's money. We want to be fresh. We want to know we want to be able to think clearly. So while I appreciate that, we do want to conduct our business, but we do want to hear the public. So maybe a way to have more input is to have more frequent public forums where we're not taking action, but we're just listening to the public comment, town halls or public forums.
Wholeheartedly agree.
So we could, again, bring that to community relations to discuss it further. Okay. Any other new business? Okay, so we've got our meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And that, just so the public knows, that is a closed session meeting. It will be opened in public and then go into closed session. And actually, there is an opportunity for public comment at that meeting too, but the meeting predominantly will be in closed session. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thanks, you